What's up, everybody? My name is James Blissett, professional sports bettor and founder of Lucrative MMA, which is my handicapping service where I help people make money from betting on MMA. And today, I want to speak about Nassourdine Imavov versus Sean Strickland, which is the upcoming UFC main event this weekend. It was supposed to be Kelvin Gastelum versus Nassourdine Imavov, but Gastelum had to pull out due to an injury. He had something wrong with his tooth or his face, I saw on Twitter. I didn't look at the details, but I do know that he's being replaced by Sean Strickland this weekend. The bout has now been moved to a 205-pound light heavyweight bout, so it's no longer at middleweight. So it's been a bit of a crazy 24 hours. I don't know if it's going to be a crazy fight when they fight, because Sean Strickland's fights often do leave a little bit to be desired in the entertainment department. But with that being said, I'll give you a quick breakdown today on what I think of the matchup. I have done tape for this fight, so I've done my tape study. I've watched the fights, the relative fights that I needed to watch to break down this fight. Unfortunately, I don't have a strong lean in this matchup. I was actually planning to do a breakdown on the Kelvin Gastelum versus Nassourdine Imavov fight, and I did have a fairly strong lean on that fight. I thought there was tons of value on Kelvin Gastelum at plus 175, plus 180, which is where it was when the fight got scrapped. I was going to bet that myself. It was probably going to be one of my biggest bets of the weekend. Not a huge bet, but of this weekend, it was probably going to be one of my biggest bets. I was just waiting to see where the line would go because it kept on climbing up and up. And unfortunately, the fight was scrapped. When I did tape for this fight, Sean Strickland versus Nassourdine Imavov, I didn't come away as convicted as I was in the Kelvin Gastelum fight, but it is what it is. I'll break down the fight today for you, and hopefully it can help you make some money on this matchup. Even if it's just passing, you may make some money because you may have lost a bet that you didn't make because of my breakdown. So either way, hopefully I can help you make a decision on what you want to do with this fight. First of all, I do want to say Happy New Year to everybody, because I think this is either my first or second stream of the new year. So if I haven't said it already, Happy New Year. It's been a it's been a hectic year for me, to begin with. The last 2 weeks I've been traveling, moving about. I finally came back to New Zealand, so I'm looking forward to putting my head down, grinding now, which I have been doing since I got here. I've done the whole tape for every fight on the card, even this new matchup, and I've already got 6 bets locked in. If you do want those bets, you can go straight to LucrativeMMABetting.com and you can get all of my bets. But without further ado, we'll go straight into the breakdown. I think this fight is a very close fight. I'll start off the breakdown by saying that. And we'll speak about Nassourdine Imavov first of all. So obviously Nassourdine is coming in to this fight with ample preparation. Not for Sean Strickland, but just for a bout in general. And not for a light heavyweight bout, right? But just for a fight in general. Whereas Sean Strickland, he wasn't training for a match. He's only took this fight in the last 24 hours, and he has to fight. He has to make that walk to the octagon in 4 days. So he doesn't have much time to prepare for a fight in general, let alone prepare for Nassourdine Imavov. But Nassourdine has had a little bit more time training, right? Obviously, Kelvin Gastelum is not the type of fighter Sean Strickland is. So he still is going to be underprepared to fight Sean Strickland, but he's more prepared than Sean Strickland. Nassourdine Imavov is a good fighter. I do like Imavov. I remember betting him back in the day, and when I say back in the day, like 2 years ago, against Phil Hawes. And that was a frustrating fight because he did lose the fight. It was his only fight that he's lost in the UFC under the UFC banner. But I felt like he could have potentially won that fight. And if not, he could have got the knockout. He hurt Phil Hawes a couple of times there, especially in round 3, I think it was. But he just couldn't get him out there, So I do think he's a good fighter. I thought he was a good fighter for a long time. That's why I bet him against Phil Hawes. And he's been on a good run, He's on a 3-fight win streak as far as I can remember. And I've got his record up here, so I'll just click it. All right, so he's on a... Oh, wait, that's Sean Strickland. Yeah, so Nassourdine Imavov, he's on a 3-fight win streak. He beat Ian Heinisch, Edmund Shabazian, and Joaquin Buckley. They were decent performances. I mean, we speak quickly about the Heinisch one. He done really well in that one. Honestly, that was probably his best performance out of the lot, in my opinion. And I'll explain why. Because I did think Ian Heinisch would get the takedowns there. I actually bet on Ian Heinisch there. In hindsight, that was a really bad bet because actually Ian Heinisch is not the guy that I thought he was, but I just made a mistake in the cap in there. But that is impressive to me because I did think Ian Heinisch would be able to get the takedowns and control him, but he wasn't able to do that. Imavov showed that he actually does have good hips. He did get taken down 4 times by Phil Hawes, but he seemed to have improved against Ian Heinisch. Now, obviously, Phil Hawes is a much better wrestler, much stronger than Ian Heinisch, but I did see some improvements in his takedown defense against Ian Heinisch, just technically. That was 5 months after the Hawes fight, and obviously he lost that fight because he got taken down. So I'm sure he was training heavily in that 5 months to shore up his takedown defense, which I believe he did. I do believe that he showed some improvements there, and it was pretty impressive because he was able to defend takedowns, get Heinisch tired, and just pick him apart on the feet. He's a much cleaner striker than Ian Heinisch, and that's what he likes to do. He likes to be a clean striker. I think his nickname is the Sniper. Let me just have a look. Well, I've heard that, or maybe I just call it, the Russian Sniper. That's his nickname, right? And that's exactly what he is. He likes to bounce in and out of range, kind of plays that karate style, throws a really good 1-2, throws a really good uppercut. He throws a good lead uppercut as well, which I always like to see. The lead uppercut is a beautiful shot. He turns it into a screw shot as well, which is very similar to a lead uppercut. Conor McGregor throws the same shot. It's one of my favorite shots in boxing to train, to throw, and just to watch in general. The screw shot straight. He does throw that every now and then. He's a clean striker. There's not much to say about him in the striking realm. I mean, he's a clean striker. He judges distance very well. He's able to read his opponent's movements. I think he makes reads in fight, which a lot of fighters don't do, especially a lot of strikers. They don't do that, because they're pretty rudimentary MMA strikers. You see it in boxing all the time. You see it in Muay Thai. You see it in high-level striking where the fighters will make reads in fight and adapt their fight style to that. But you don't see it as much in MMA because the level of striking in MMA is just not that high. But Imavov will do it, right? So I've seen him multiple times in his fights make adjustments on the fly, and they've actually worked well for him. He actually did it against Joaquin Buckley. When Buckley was coming forward into the pocket, he made an adjustment to throw the lead uppercut, and he caught him with that a few times. So he's a good fighter. He's a good striker. I actually think his grappling could be even better than his striking. But I think it's a little bit underutilized by himself. So I don't know whether he just loves being on the feet or he doesn't rate his grappling as much as me. But I do think he underutilizes his grappling a little bit. Maybe he gets tired when he does it because he did get tired in that Buckley fight, and we will touch on that quickly before we move to Sean Strickland. But I do think that if he came out with more of a grappling game plan, he may have more success against some of these guys. Because he's a tall guy, he's a very strong guy, his grip's strong, and he's actually a really good grappler. When he gets on top, he looks dangerous. He finished Edmund from top. He dominated Buckley from top. I think he's actually pretty good on top. And actually, I think his wrestling's pretty good as well. So he's a good all-round fighter, Now, the negatives about him, he can be a little bit low volume at times. I do think he can let the fight slip away from him. He hasn't necessarily done it too much in the UFC, but there's been glimpses of it in his fight style, and I can see that in certain future fights, he may just let the fight slip away from him because, it's a 50-50 round. He's going back and forth. He's not putting a stamp on a round. I think that could be said about him going forward. I will also say that when he fought Joaquin Buckley, he seemed to gas out a little bit in that 3rd round. Now, I don't think he completely gassed out, and if the fight went into the 4th and 5th rounds, he would have lost. I don't believe that was the case. A lot of fighters, when they gas out, they're basically done, right? Once they gas out, they have no way of coming back into the fight. Once they gas out, you can tell they're wilting. You can tell they're going to give up. The writing's on the wall. Once they start gassing out, they've basically finished. I don't think Imavov is that guy. I did see him start to gas out against Buckley in that 3rd round, but I do think he would have come on. I think he potentially would have got a second wind in the 4th and 5th round. Now, obviously, this is just speculation, but from my years watching MMA fights, I kind of feel like Imavov was more just taking a rest and catching his breath rather than completely wilting and he was going to cardio death the next round or the next minute and he was going to get finished by Buckley. I don't think it was that brutal. I just think he was tired, but I do feel somewhat confident that he would have got a second wind in round 4 or round 5, or at least would have not fell off a cliff in round 4 and round 5. Because I don't think he fell off a cliff in round 3. I just feel like it was a high-paced fight, and everybody gets tired in high-paced fights, and he was tired. So, on the one hand, we recognize that, okay, he did get tired in that 3rd round, so it's something we have to think about in this fight, especially as it's a 5-round fight. But we also have to acknowledge that he didn't completely cardio death. He was still fighting until the final bell, and we can't say that instantly he's a gasser now and he's going to gas anytime he gets into the championship rounds. So it's a double-edged sword, you know. It's basically still a question to me. Some people are classing him as a gasser already. For me, he's not. It's still a question mark, right? So yeah, it's going to be he's a good fighter, and I think he's going to do well in the division. Now, going on to Sean Strickland. There's not much to say about Sean Strickland. I don't have a good read on the guy. I've never had a good read on the guy. He's got an awkward style, but it's very, very meat and potatoes, right? So when I say awkward, it's actually very basic, but it's awkward for me to assess coming up against opponents. Because in that last fight against Cannonier, I thought that if it goes 5 rounds, Sean Strickland was probably going to win the fight. But I did actually fancy Cannonier to knock him out. But Cannonier never come close to knocking him out. But the fight played out how I thought it would. I thought Sean would be in boxing range, you know, as he always does. I thought he'd be just trying to slip out of range. But I didn't think he'd be able to do that against Cannonier. But he did. So straight off the bat, I recognize, you know, as a sports bettor, as an MMA gambler, I can recognize my faults, my weaknesses, and my strengths. And I recognize that I don't have a great read on Sean Strickland's skill set. So going into this fight, I'm not going to be super convicted either side. Or I'll put it this way. I'm not going to rush to bet either side if I don't have extreme conviction, because I'm just historically not that good at predicting Sean Strickland fights, or at least the way they're going to go, right? Because I did pick Cannonier to win and I was correct, but the way the fight went, I was incorrect on that, right? So I think Sean Strickland's a good fighter. You know, he's obviously clearly a good fighter. You know, he's definitely a top 10 fighter. He's got a good jab. And that's really what his game is based around, right? It's jab, it's boxing. He doesn't do much more than that. He doesn't throw many leg kicks. He doesn't even throw many body shots. He's basically a headhunter, but he doesn't headhunt with power. That's why his style is successful. When you get headhunters just they aim for the head, but with 100% power. Those guys never do very well in MMA, usually, right? The reason Sean Strickland does well as a headhunter in the UFC is because he headhunts with volume, with light strikes, with jabs, with 1-2s. He just tries to overwhelm you with volume so he can get away with only trying to aim for the head, because it's just little short shots and they're hard to get out of the way from. You know, it's much easier to get out of the way from a massive hook than it is to get out of the way from a little jab. So that's why Sean Strickland's style is so useful or effective in MMA, is because he just pumps out tons of volume. And it is hard to deal with, you know, because he stays right in the pocket. He stays right in boxing range. And even power punchers like Cannonier have a hard time landing on him in the pocket. And Cannonier is an expert at that. Cannonier is an expert at landing hooks in the pocket. And he couldn't really do it on Sean Strickland. You know, he busted up Sean Strickland a little bit. Come the 5th round, his nose was pouring. But at the end of the day, Sean fought on the feet, basically in boxing range against Jared Cannonier for 25 minutes and basically didn't get wobbled once, you know. So I was very impressed with Sean Strickland in that fight because of the way he fought. At least I was impressed with his boxing defense, you know. And that's something I'm always impressed with, Sean, is his boxing defense. He's always able to just get out of the way, unless he's fighting a complete specialist like Alex Pereira, right? So that's what he's going to do in this fight. He's going to pump out volume. He's going to throw his little teep kick to the gut every now and then, but 90% of his strikes are going to be jabs or 1-2s. And we're going to see how Nassourdine Imavov deals with that. Now, the way I see the fight playing out is I think Sean Strickland has a clear cardio edge, right? As I said, I'm not ready to label Nassourdine Imavov a gasser at all. But I am ready to say that Sean Strickland has a definite cardio edge. I mean, Sean Strickland fights 5 rounds and looks like he hasn't even fought 1 round, except for maybe he's got a couple cuts on his face. His cardio seems very good, even in fairly high-paced striking fights. I don't know how they'll be in grappling fights, but I don't suspect this to be a grappling fight. There may be some takedowns on either side, but I don't suspect it to be a grappling fight. So I do think that we can fairly confidently say that Imavov is at a cardio disadvantage in this fight. And that actually matters a lot because it's a 5-round fight. If it was a 3-round fight and he was at a cardio disadvantage, it doesn't matter as much. But because it's a 5-round fight, it matters. I think what we can also say is that Imavov is the much more fluid striker and he has much more tools. Imavov will throw, as I said, teep kicks. He doesn't throw many leg kicks, but he will throw screw shot uppercuts, 1-2s, hooks, 3-punch combinations, shots to the body, body shots. Whereas Sean Strickland doesn't. Something that I see in this fight, or something that's interesting to me in this fight, is how is Imavov going to deal with the volume of Sean Strickland? Because it's a massive, massive volume advantage for Sean Strickland. It's a cardio advantage for Sean Strickland, and it's a volume advantage for Sean Strickland. Because his last 3 5-round fights, apart from, I don't know if the Pereira fight was 5-round, I don't think it was. His last 3 5-round fights, he's landed over 150 strikes in all of those fights, which is extremely impressive. That is elite. That is honestly an elite stat, And Imavov has never even landed over 70 strikes in any of his fights. Granted, they were 3-round fights, but I mean, the guy's landing on average like 50 strikes in 3-round fights, and Sean Strickland's landing like 70, 80 strikes in 3-round fights. So Sean Strickland definitely has a striking advantage in terms of the volume. In terms of the skill set, I think Nassourdine Imavov probably is like a more technical striker, but I don't think that it's such a massive gap because I think Sean Strickland's going to land a lot in the boxing range. And yeah, my pick's going to be Sean Strickland for this fight, just because I think the level of competition, is clear there. It's clear level of competition gap for Sean Strickland. Clear cardio advantage for Sean Strickland and volume advantage for Sean Strickland. And obviously, or honestly, I should say, those 3 things are enough for me to pick Sean Strickland. So the cardio advantage, the output advantage, and the level of competition advantage, those 3 things are enough for me to say that Sean Strickland is my pick. In terms of a bet, I'll have to see the odds. I think they was released, and I think when I last saw him, Imavov was a favourite. But yeah, I don't really know what it is now. But honestly, guys, just in general, I don't have any... Yeah, so it's like minus 120 to Sean Strickland right now, or minus 110 a piece on a couple of books. So it's a pick'em. Man, I don't really have much desire to bet Sean Strickland at minus 110 here. I had a lot more desire to bet Kelvin Gastelum at plus 180 or plus 190, whatever it was going to be, than I do to bet Sean Strickland at minus 110. I have to lay juice on him when I was just going to get a big underdog price on someone who I feel like is, maybe he's not as good as Sean Strickland, but I think they're basically comparable fighters. I think they're basically on the same level in terms of just MMA, and I actually like Kelvin Gastelum's chances maybe a little bit better than Sean Strickland in this fight. Or at least the same. So I'm getting plus 180 on an outcome which I class as basically the same probability to win against Imavov as Sean Strickland, and I'm getting minus 110 on him. So, it doesn't really tickle my fancy too much. And as I said at the beginning of this breakdown, I have a historically bad record when it comes to Sean Strickland fights, just in terms of my breakdown of the fights. Not bets or anything, but just in terms of how I break down the fights and what I think is going to happen. Because I underrate Sean Strickland a little bit, And if you think about it, if I'm saying I underrate Sean Strickland a bit, but I'm actually picking him to win this fight, then maybe he wins and he looks like a bigger favorite than I think he will. But I still think Imavov, has skills that maybe we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen him in the 4th and 5th rounds. Maybe he gets a second wind. Maybe he doesn't even tire. Who knows? That could have been a one-off. There's lots to say. There's lots of questions in this fight for me. But my pick is going to be Sean Strickland. My pick is going to be Sean Strickland to win via decision. But I have no interest in backing it. So that's all, guys. A little breakdown there for you. In-depth breakdown for you. So hopefully it can help you, make a decision on how you want to play this fight. I would have done a quicker breakdown if I was doing a longer live stream. But since it's only a one-fight stream or one-fight video, I wanted to do a bit of a longer breakdown. And yeah, I'll be back next week with another video, probably. I've been teasing it for a long time now, but I've got a lot of videos in the bank and they are coming soon. So yeah, watch out for those. Subscribe to the channel. Not much more to say. If you did want all of my picks and predictions for this card, for every card, all the upcoming cards, you can sign up to my betting service. We've won 4 years in a row, publicly tracked. I've won 4 years before that as well. And we're going to keep winning, We're going to keep winning year after year after year after year. So lucrativemmabetting.com. All the links are below if you want to see my results and my third-party track record and stuff like that. But until next time, I will see you in the next video.